There is a voice that starts talking the moment something goes wrong. Not the event itself. The event is usually over in seconds. But the voice keeps going. It replays what you said. It rehearses what you should have said. It takes a small mistake and builds it carefully into something much heavier, a verdict about what kind of person you are, delivered in your own tone, with your own vocabulary, in a voice so familiar that you do not think to question whether it is telling the truth. You know the voice. It waits until 3 in the morning when there is nothing to distract you and runs through every failure it can find. It takes a single awkward sentence from a conversation 3 weeks ago and convinces you that everyone noticed, everyone judged, that the sentence revealed something permanent about you. It turns a missed deadline into evidence of incompetence, a broken relationship into proof that you are unlovable. And the worst part is not that it says these things. The worst part is that you believe it because it sounds exactly like you. But here's the part that changes everything. That voice is not reporting the truth. It is generating a story, taking raw events and adding layers of interpretation the events never contained. The awkward sentence was just a sentence. The voice made it a revelation of character. The missed deadline was just a deadline. The voice made it a verdict on your worth. And those additions, the interpretations, the judgments, the verdicts, are not facts. They are habits of thought that have been running so long they feel like truth. The Stoics understood this mechanism with a precision that modern psychology is only now catching up to. They built an entire practice around it, a discipline of examining the voice before obeying it, of separating what happened from what the mind decided it meant. What follows is the anatomy of that voice, examined through 3 lenses: how it operates, why you believe it, and how the Stoics learned to live with it without being governed by it. Welcome to Logostoic. What you are about to hear is not a motivational pep talk about thinking positive. It is an examination of how the voice inside your head actually works, and why the Stoics, who faced plagues, exile, and the deaths of people they loved, concluded that the most dangerous enemy a person faces is not the world, but the narrator inside their own skull. This is not for everyone. It is for the person who has been listening to that voice for years, believing every word, and is ready to find out that the voice was never the authority it pretended to be. If that is you, like this video, subscribe to Logostoic, and stay for all 3 parts. If you are ready to stop obeying the narrator without questioning it first, prove it. Comment now, I question the voice. Now let's begin. Start with the mechanism, because everything else depends on understanding how the voice actually works, what it does between the moment something happens and the moment you feel crushed by it. The gap is small, often less than a second, but inside that gap the entire operation takes place. Epictetus described this with a clarity that has not been improved on in 2,000 years. He taught his students to distinguish between 2 things most people permanently confuse: the impression and the judgment. The impression is what arrives, the raw event, the thing that happened, the fact as it actually is before you have done anything with it. The judgment is what you add to it, the interpretation, the meaning, the story your mind constructs on top of the event. And his central teaching, the one he returned to more than any other, was this: it is not the impression that disturbs you, it is the judgment. Watch this play out in your own experience, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Something happens. A friend does not return your call. That is the impression. It is complete and it is neutral. A call was not returned. But the voice does not stop at the impression. Within seconds it has added, they are avoiding you. You said something wrong. They do not value you. They are pulling away. Each of these is a judgment, an interpretation added to the bare fact by a mind that cannot tolerate gaps. And each of these judgments carries an emotional charge that the original event did not have. The pain you feel is not coming from the unreturned call. It is coming from the story your mind built on top of it in the seconds after it happened. The Stoics had a specific name for the practice of catching this in real time. They called it prososh, attention, watchfulness, the discipline of noticing the gap between impression and judgment before the judgment has hardened into something you treat as fact. It is, in their understanding, the single most important skill a human being can develop. Not because it eliminates negative thoughts, it does not, but because it reveals, in the moment, that the thought you are about to believe is not a report. It is a construction, and constructions can be examined before they are endorsed. There is an everyday image that makes this concrete. Imagine someone hands you a photograph, a clear, unedited image of a street scene. That is the impression. Now imagine someone takes that photograph, writes a caption underneath it, and hands it back. The caption says, "This is where your life started falling apart." The photograph has not changed, but your experience of looking at it has changed completely, because the caption has told you what the image means, and you have accepted the caption as part of the photograph. The Stoic practice is, in essence, learning to see the photograph without the caption. Not to deny that captions exist. The mind will always produce them, automatically and without permission, but to notice in real time that the caption is not the photograph. The caption is an opinion. The photograph is what happened. And you have been reading the opinion as if it were the event for your entire life. The event is the event. The story about the event is something your mind added afterward. And those are not the same thing. Epictetus understood this mechanism from a position that gives it unusual weight. He was born a slave. His body belonged to another person. His external circumstances were, by any measure, among the worst available to a human being in the ancient world. And yet it was from inside those circumstances that he developed the most precise understanding of the gap between impression and judgment that any philosopher has left us. Because when your external life is entirely outside your control, the internal operation of your own mind becomes the only territory worth mapping. And Epictetus mapped it with the precision of a man whose survival depended on knowing where the real threat was. The real threat, he concluded, was never the master who owned his body. It was the moment when his own mind added a judgment to the master's cruelty and turned a painful event into a permanent verdict about his worth. The event could not be changed. The verdict could. Modern cognitive science has, in its own language, arrived at the same place. The field of cognitive behavioral therapy is built almost entirely on the distinction Epictetus described, that between an activating event and the belief about the event, and that most emotional suffering is generated not by the event itself, but by the belief, which is rarely examined, rarely questioned, and almost always treated as self-evidently true. The Stoics did not have the clinical vocabulary, they had the practice. And the practice, it turns out, was describing the same architecture 2,000 years before the architecture was formally mapped. The practical difference this makes is immediate and testable. The next time a negative thought lands, the next time the voice delivers a verdict about who you are or what something means, try holding it for one moment as a caption rather than a photograph. Do not argue with it. Do not try to replace it with something positive. Simply notice that it is an addition. The event was one thing, the caption is another, and you are not obligated to read the caption as part of the picture. That single act of noticing, which takes less than a second and costs nothing, is the discipline of assent in its simplest form, and it changes, over time, the entire relationship between you and the voice that has been narrating your life without your permission. Every painful thought you have believed today was not a report from reality. It was a caption your mind wrote on top of what actually happened. Stop reading the caption as truth. Comment below, "I am not what it says." Understanding how the voice works is the first step. But the harder question is the one that follows. If the voice is generating stories rather than reporting facts, why do you believe it so completely? Why does it have the authority it has? Why, even when you know intellectually that your thoughts are not always accurate, do you still find yourself obeying them as if they were? The answer is deceptively simple, and it is the reason most people remain trapped. You believe the voice because it is familiar, not because it is correct, because it has been saying the same things for so long that its conclusions feel like part of who you are. A thought repeated 100 times does not become more true, but it becomes more familiar. And the mind, which is built to conserve energy and avoid the cost of reevaluating everything from scratch, treats familiarity as a proxy for truth. What I have heard before must be reliable, because if it were not, surely I would have questioned it by now. That reasoning is circular, and it is the exact mechanism by which the voice acquires its authority without ever earning it. This is where Marcus Aurelius becomes not just a philosopher worth quoting, but a case study worth examining closely. Because Marcus did something that almost no one else in the ancient world did, and that very few people do even now. He argued with the voice, in writing every day. The Meditations, the most private document in all of Stoic philosophy, is not a book of wisdom delivered from on high. It is the record of a man who did not trust his own narrator, who sat down regularly and challenged what the voice was telling him, who wrote things like, "Do not say to yourself more than the initial impressions report, and you are not your sensation of this. You are not the judgment your mind has attached to it. Consider what that actually represents." The most powerful man in the world, a man whose word was law across an empire, whose judgments governed the lives of millions, did not trust the judgments his own mind produced about himself. He treated his own inner voice with the same skepticism he would have applied to an unreliable advisor, listening to it, noting what it said, and then deciding, deliberately, whether to endorse it or not. He did not suppress the voice. He did not try to silence it. He examined it. And in the examining, he discovered that much of what it said was not truth, but repetition. Old patterns, old fears, old verdicts that had been rehearsed so many times they had come to feel like conclusions. Consider how this works in practice, because the mechanism is almost invisible once it is running. The first time a negative thought appears, "I'm not good enough," it arrives as a stranger. You might notice it. You might even push back against it. But the second time it appears, it arrives with slightly more familiarity. By the 10th time, it feels less like a visitor and more like a resident. By the 100th time, you have stopped noticing it as a thought at all. It has become part of the furniture of your mind, something that is just there, like the color of the walls, something you stopped questioning so long ago that the idea of questioning it now feels strange. And that is the trap. The thought did not prove itself. It outlasted your resistance to it. It moved in, unpacked its bags, and stayed until you forgot it was not always there. There is a principle in psychology that maps onto this with uncomfortable precision. Researchers studying belief formation have documented what they call the illusory truth effect. The finding that a statement heard multiple times is rated as more believable than a novel statement, regardless of whether it is actually true. The mechanism is not rational. It is not that the repeated statement has been verified more thoroughly. It is that the brain processes familiar information more fluently, more easily, with less friction, and misinterprets that fluency as a signal of accuracy. Your negative thoughts feel true for the same reason a song stuck in your head feels important, not because of its content, but because of its repetition. The voice has been saying you are not good enough for years. That does not make it correct. It makes it rehearsed. And here's the part that locks the trap shut. The voice does not present its conclusions as possibilities. It presents them as verdicts. It does not say this might mean you are failing. It says you are failing. It does not say perhaps they do not like you. It says they do not like you. The tone is certain, final, and authoritative. And because the tone matches the tone of your reasonable thoughts, there is no internal signal that distinguishes the accurate from the distorted. Everything arrives in the same voice with the same certainty. The only way to tell the difference is to pause and examine, which is exactly the step the voice is designed to skip, because examination is slow and the voice is fast. And here's where the real damage occurs, the part most people never notice until it is well advanced. When the voice repeats a verdict often enough, it stops sounding like a thought about you and starts sounding like a description of you. The shift is almost imperceptible. "I made a mistake" becomes "I am the kind of person who makes mistakes." "I failed at this" becomes "I am a failure." The thought moves from something that happened to something that you are, and once it has made that crossing, it becomes almost impossible to challenge, because you are no longer examining a thought. You are defending an identity. The Stoics saw this with unusual clarity. They understood that the most dangerous thing a negative thought can do is not make you sad. It is make you someone defined by the verdict, someone whose sense of self has been quietly built by the repetitions they never questioned. Marcus understood this. It is why the meditations exists. The journal was his mechanism for slowing the voice down, for taking what arrived with the speed and certainty of a verdict and submitting it, on the page, to the kind of examination it could not survive. The thoughts that felt devastating at 3 a.m. looked different in writing by lamplight. There is something about the act of putting a thought into words on a page that strips away the emotional charge the thought carried when it was only in your head. The thought I am failing experienced silently at 3 a.m. is enormous. The same thought written in a journal by lamplight, I had a thought that I am failing, is smaller. The writing did not change the content, it changed the relationship. The thought was no longer happening to you. It was sitting in front of you, on the page, where it could be looked at rather than lived inside. Marcus used this mechanism almost every day for the last decade of his life, and the evidence is the Meditations itself, a document that exists only because one man decided that the voice in his head was worth examining on paper rather than obeying in silence. The verdicts that felt permanent dissolved when they were asked to justify themselves. The voice did not stop, but it lost its unquestioned authority because Marcus had built a practice of questioning it, and the practice, repeated daily, was stronger than the habit. The voice in your head has been delivering verdicts for years, and you have been obeying every one of them without asking for evidence. It earned nothing. It repeated itself until you stopped checking. Stop accepting the verdict. Type below, I refuse the verdict. There is a cost to what has been described so far, and it is worth naming honestly. If the voice is not truth but habit, and if its authority was not earned but assumed through repetition, then the solution might seem obvious. Silence it. Shut it down. Find a way to make the negative thoughts stop arriving. And this is where most modern self-help goes wrong, because it promises exactly that, and the promise is a lie. The thoughts will not stop. The voice will not go silent. The mind produces thoughts the way the lungs produce breath, continuously, automatically, and without asking your permission. The question was never how to stop the voice. It was how to stop being governed by it. Seneca captured this distinction in a single observation that has aged better than almost anything else written about the human mind. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Modern research on rumination, the habit of replaying and re-examining negative events in a continuous loop, has confirmed what Seneca observed from the inside. People who ruminate do not process their difficulties more effectively. They process them more repeatedly, which deepens the emotional impact without producing any corresponding insight or resolution. The voice that replays the failure is not helping you learn from it. It is rehearsing the pain of it. And each rehearsal makes the next one easier to trigger, so that the pattern becomes self-reinforcing. The more you ruminate, the more naturally rumination occurs, until the voice no longer needs a trigger at all. It simply runs, producing suffering out of material that reality finished delivering a long time ago. Not sometimes, not occasionally, more often, which means that the majority of your suffering on any given day is not being caused by what is actually happening to you. It is being caused by the stories the voice is telling you about what is happening, what might happen, what it all means. And if that is true, and the research on rumination, catastrophizing, and worry strongly suggests that it is, then the leverage point for reducing suffering is not in changing reality. It is in changing the relationship you have with the narrator. The Stoic approach to this is not what most people expect, because it does not involve force. They did not recommend fighting the voice, arguing with it, or trying to overpower it with positive affirmations. They recommended something considerably more precise, considerably more difficult, and considerably more effective: observation. The practice of stepping back from the thought, not suppressing it, not endorsing it, but observing it as something that has appeared in your awareness without automatically treating it as a command you must follow. Chrysippus, the Stoic philosopher who systematized much of the school's thought, gave the observing part of the mind a name: the hegemonikon, the governing faculty. His argument was that the mind is not one thing. It has components. There are impressions, the raw data of experience. There are impulses, the automatic reactions the impressions generate. And there is the governing faculty, the part that receives all of this and decides whether to endorse it. Most people, most of the time, skip the governing faculty entirely. A thought arrives and they accept it. An impulse fires and they follow it. The hegemonicon goes unused. And when it goes unused, the self becomes nothing more than a weather system, responsive, variable, and owned by whatever happens to blow through. The development of the governing faculty is what the Stoics meant by self-mastery. Not the mastery of suppression, forcing yourself not to think certain things. The mastery of examination, catching the thought, holding it at arm's length, and asking one clean question before you let it in. Is this impression accurate, or is the voice adding something that was not there? That question asked consistently is the entire practice. It does not require a meditation app. It does not require a retreat. It requires 1 second of pause between the thought arriving and the moment you believe it. And in that 1 second, the thought loses most of its power because it has been seen for what it is, a narrator's interpretation, not a report from reality. There is a practical element here that is worth stating as directly as possible, because the philosophy is useless if it does not translate into something you can do tomorrow morning. The practice is not complicated. It is not a 30-minute meditation. It is not a journaling protocol. It is a single pause, 1 second long, inserted between the moment a thought arrives and the moment you believe it. In that 1 second, you ask one question. Is this the event, or is this the story my mind is telling about the event? That question asked once changes nothing. Asked 100 times, it begins to rewire the automatic process by which the voice acquires its authority. Asked 1,000 times, it becomes a reflex, and the reflex is stronger than the habit it replaced, because the reflex is being used consciously and the habit was running on autopilot. There is an image from ordinary life that may make this easier to hold. A farmer who plants a seed does not dig it up every morning to check whether it is growing. He plants it, waters it, and trusts the process, knowing that the checking would destroy the very thing the patience would produce. The governing faculty works the same way. You do not need to win every encounter with the voice on the first day. You need to plant the pause, practice the question, and let the repetition do the work the force never could. The results are not dramatic. They are gradual, but they are real, and they compound, the way all genuine disciplines compound, into something that one day you realize has quietly changed the entire landscape of your inner life. Think of it this way. You are standing at a window, and outside the window a storm is happening. Wind, rain, noise. The storm is real. It is happening. But you are not in the storm. You are behind the glass, watching it. The thoughts are the storm. The governing faculty is the window. The practice is remembering that you are behind the glass, that the storm is happening in front of you, not inside you, and that watching it pass is not the same as being swept away by it. This does not make the storm less real. It makes you less at its mercy. And that distinction between the storm and the person watching it is the entire space in which freedom from the voice actually lives. There is a passage in Epictetus that compresses the whole of this into one image. A person comes to him distressed. They are suffering. The suffering is real, and Epictetus does not tell them to stop feeling it. He tells them to notice that the suffering is being produced not by what happened, but by a judgment the mind has attached to what happened, and that the judgment, unlike the event, is within their power to examine, and if it does not hold up, to set down. Not to suppress, not to replace with something cheerful, simply to set down, the way you would set down a package someone handed you on the street once you realized it was not yours. The thought arrived, you picked it up, and now having looked at it clearly, you can put it down. It was never yours to carry. You have been carrying the voice's packages for years, every verdict, every judgment, every story it told you about who you are. You picked them up because they sounded like yours. They were not. Put them down. Write in the comments, I observe without obeying. 3 things. How the voice operates, taking raw events and adding layers of judgment that the events never contained, so fast that you mistake the judgment for the event. Why you believe it, Not because it earned your trust through accuracy, but because it earned your familiarity through repetition, and the mind confuses the two. And how to live with it without being governed by it. Not by silencing the voice, which is impossible, but by developing the governing faculty that can observe it, examine it, and decide, thought by thought, whether to endorse or set it down. The voice will not stop. It was never going to stop. The mind produces thoughts the way the sky produces weather, continuously, impersonally, and without consulting you about whether you would like the forecast. The Stoics understood this better than almost any tradition that has followed them, better in many ways than the modern wellness industry that promises you can think your way to permanent positivity if you just try hard enough. The Stoics never tried to build a practice on the fantasy of a silent mind because they knew the fantasy was a trap. They built it on something more durable and more honest, the capacity to stand behind the glass and watch the storm pass through without mistaking it for a description of who you are. That capacity is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It is built in the smallest possible moments, in the 1-second pause before you believe the thought, in the quiet decision to examine rather than obey, in the daily practice of noticing the caption and remembering that the caption is not the photograph. Over time, practice daily in the kind of unglamorous repetition the Stoics insisted on, those small moments accumulate into something that genuinely changes everything, a self that is no longer at the mercy of whatever the voice happens to produce on a given morning. Not because you defeated the voice, because you stopped needing it to be right. And that is the deepest inversion this video can offer. The voice behind your negative thoughts is not your enemy. It never was. It is a narrator, one that has been running on autopilot for so long that it forgot it was ever supposed to be questioned. The moment you start questioning it, it does not become silent. It becomes smaller. And in the space that opens up between the thought and the belief, you find something that was always there, but that the noise had been covering, the part of you that was never the voice, the part that listens, the part that decides, the part that once it learns to hold the thought without being held by it, is genuinely free. The voice behind your negative thoughts is not your enemy. It is a narrator that forgot it was supposed to be questioned. And the moment you start questioning it, it loses the only power it ever had, the power you gave it by never asking for evidence. That is the whole of today's video, and if any of it reached the place where the voice has been running unchecked, the work ahead is not complicated. It is a single pause, repeated until the pause becomes stronger than the habit. If this video changed how you hear the voice inside your head, if it replaced an authority you had never questioned with something you can now examine, consider liking it. Not as a reflex, but because there are people right now lying awake at 3 a.m, believing every word the narrator says, who need exactly this and will only find it if those who recognize themselves in it carry it to them. Every like is a real act of putting this in front of one of them. And leave a comment. Write down one thought the voice has been repeating to you, one verdict it has been delivering for months or years, and ask yourself, honestly, whether you ever examined it or whether you simply believed it because it was familiar. The Stoics believed the examined life begins precisely with that question, asked about the thoughts you have stopped noticing you are obeying. The comments below are full of people doing the same work. Add yours and the next person reading will know they are not the only one the voice has been lying to. Subscribe to Logostoic, because learning to examine the narrator inside your own head is not the work of a single video. It is the work of returning again and again to the practice of questioning what arrives without evidence and refusing to carry what was never yours. That is what this channel is built for. If that is the kind of freedom you actually want, you have found the right place. May you learn to hear the voice without following it, to hold the thought without being held by it, and to discover, behind the noise that never stops, the quiet part of you that was always free.